Hello, astrology lovers, and welcome to Astrology Hub TV. My name is Amanda Pua Walsh, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Astrology Hub. And Astrology Hub TV is a weekly show dedicated to helping you explore your connection to the cosmos and how cultivating this connection can help you live a more empowered, fulfilling, and vibrant life. We're here every Thursday at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern. And this is just a reminder for those of you who have been following our newest course launch. We have a 10-week How to Read a Chart course available to you now through midnight tonight. Enrollment is closing today. So for those of you who are interested in joining our 10-week course, Decode Your Cosmic Blueprint, How to Read a Chart for Yourself and Others, now is the time. And we're going to have one of our Astrology Hub 18 angels, Stephanie. She's going to post that link in the chat and in the description above this video. So check it out. We'd love to have you join us. All right, so today we are so honored to have professional astrologer Adam Sommer making his Astrology Hub TV debut. On today's episode, you're going to learn what drives someone to turn their love for astrology into a profession. You're going to learn what Adam finds most inspiring about being a professional astrologer, Adam's most valuable astrological technique, and tips to begin or continue exploring astrology, either as a profession or just as a love. So today's episode is for you if you're curious to learn more about what it takes to become a professional astrologer, if you want to learn the #1 technique Adam has used with his clients that has given him amazing results, and if you want to know the most effective ways to learn astrology over time. All right, Adam. So before we dive in with everybody here today, I just want to give them a little bit more about your background.
Sure.
All right. So Adam is dedicated to augmenting your experience of astrology through playful words, inspired conversation in his podcasts, creating rich learning environments in his classes, and hopefully experiencing life-changing readings with you as well. Adam has been practicing professionally for a decade, working with clients and students all over the world. Trained and certified by Maurice Fernandez, president of OPA, also a Astrology Hub favorite, Adam has used this sturdy foundation to explore many other branches of the astrology tree as well, like Jyotish, evolutionary, archetypal, and traditional forms. By borrowing from many traditions and applying the techniques to his own life and the many beings he has worked with along the way, Adam has stumbled into what he calls cosmognosis, a direct and living relationship with the cosmos, one which infinitely informs the participant with the most unique strain of wisdom. It's his hope you get to experience this through his work. Adam, that sounds so amazing. Did I say that word right? Cosmognosis?
Cosmognosis.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll talk about that in a sec. Yeah. Just wanted to ask the audience, for those of you out there, hello and welcome. And we have Adam here with us today, who's been practicing for over a decade. If any of you have any questions about what it takes to become a professional astrologer, or how he has experienced success along the path, what he's done to, advance his learning, or how he actually followed that path, please put those questions in the chat and we will be asking them later. All right. So Adam, welcome. It's so amazing to have you here. Thank you so much.
I'm honored. Thank you.
All right. So first question for you. What is the one thing that you're most passionate about in astrology, and why do you feel like it's so important for all of us?
I would say getting outside and actually connecting with the sky, which means cycles, synodic cycles, knowing how to notice Venus in the morning and evening sky when she's not around, Mercury, Mars, all the rest of them. And once you start working with these cycles, you start having a relationship to time that is quite different than the time that I think we are kind of trained to understand ourselves through. It's not a straight line, it's cycles, circles, and circles within circles. And I think that it's one of the most amazing ways of augmenting a reading, but also working with intention, goals, anything that a client might want to get from a reading is when you can really harness the power of working with a living cycle and then get outside and actually connect with it as well. It's kind of a shamanic way of working with astrology to some extent, but it changed my practice working with cycles and actually sleeping outside with them too, being able to have that real experience of it. That's one of them.
Okay. All right.
Sure.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest kind of setback for us in not working with these cycles or not being connected with them? How do you see that affecting people's lives?
Confusing the chart for what is actually happening, right? And that word that I use, cosmonosis, right? The living wisdom of the cosmos in some sense. It's lost upon us if we're just so focused on a two-dimensional chart, which of course has so much to offer us, but there's more to it than that. And I think that we need both. It's not one or the other. You definitely need both of them to inform what's happening.
Great. Okay, Adam, how did you come to astrology? How did you find this passion?
It was kind of an accident. It definitely like a cosmic giggle of sorts. I was always interested in consciousness ever since I was a teenager. And I went to Naropa, I went to acupuncture school, I've studied Qigong, plants, like I've been on a journey with all of this. And astrology was not there was no roadmap for me being like, okay, now I have to study astrology. I was actually quite disinterested in astrology until I was about 22, 23. And it was a move out west, actually to Portland, when I started meeting astrologers. And so I would do trades with them, and it took a while before I met one that like really affected me. And I was like, okay, this is a really powerful way of seeing into the soul and working with this. And so I became very interested in how astrology can become a diagnostic tool in the work that I was already doing. And then around that time, which was like, well, actually a little bit before that time, was when Rick Tarnas released Cosmos and Psyche. And I was already familiar with Rick's work because of a philosophy class I took in college. And he wrote a book before that called Passion of the Western Mind, which I really enjoyed. And when Cosmos and Psyche came out, I actually purchased the book, not even having any idea it was on astrology. So I started reading this book and I'm like, oh, you got me. Like I had no idea I'd purchased my first astrology book. And I read it. And I think that was really the first seed was thanks to Rick. And that's the archetypal astrology model and whatnot.
How did you get to the point where, so it sounds like from the story you told before that you weren't necessarily as connected with the living sky and the cycles. How did that part happen for you?
I would say through my podcast. So a lot of my learning, a good majority of it has happened through doing my podcast.
What's the name of your podcast for those who are interested?
Yeah, Exploring Astrology.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been doing it since the spring of 2009. That was my first show.
Almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years. Nice. And in the beginning, I didn't know a lot of astrologers. So I was contacting the ones that I was familiar with, like Stephen Forrest and Rick Tarnas and Maurice, who was a friend of mine in Boulder at the time, and asking them, like, who should I have on the show? Like, who are astrologers that would be an interesting conversation and that I could learn from? And very quickly, I started engaging with people that were working with the living sky, like Adam Gainsberg, for example. And him and I became friends through my podcast. We still never met in person, but I do consider him a friend for sure.
You still never met in person to this day?
No. We will then.
Yeah. We have friends all over the world that we haven't met in person, right?
I know. Yeah. It's a strange thing. So yeah, it was definitely Adam's work that got me excited about Venus, and then like my own inquiries into going deeper into this kind of started. And then like actually my latest podcast is with Gary Caton, and he's devoted a lot of time to the Mercury cycles. And there's a lot of people out there that are doing this work. And so the ones that I resonate with and I want to talk to, I just have them on my podcast, and I learned so much from that. And so that's when it began. So it was pretty early in my career when I started really carefully watching these synodic cycles.
Fantastic. All right. Yeah. We have a couple of questions from the audience.
Fun.
Chris asked, how many years have you been studying astrology?
So I got Rick's book in 2007. So I think that technically starts. That's when I read Cosmos and Psyche.
Okay.
And awesome. First pulled up my chart. Yeah.
And how would you, advise someone, this is a question from Colette, on deciding between Western and Vedic astrology?
I study both. So I'll say that out of the gate, that I don't recommend that path to everybody.
Which one?
Studying both at the same time. Like, I think it can be really confusing, especially for beginners, to do that. Whatever resonates, like the pole, and I think committing to it is very important, because there was a phase in my early years when I would actually cast both the sidereal and the Western chart and use Vedic techniques in the reading. And that, it's a powerful way of doing it, but there's a lot of explanation that you have to do with your client of like, okay, but when I'm looking at this chart, my sun sign is not the same anymore. So like, what does that mean? And so I realized it was a little confusing for people to do that. And so I just kind of committed to the Western models of it. And I actually do use a few Jyotish techniques still, but they're kind of in my head when I'm preparing. And there's one that I do show people, which is a Time Lord technique called the Vimshatari Dasa cycle, that I think everybody could utilize. Yeah. So
how did you decide on committing to the modern Western?
The Western, yeah, and the tropical zodiac. Well, it works. It's where I started, and the majority of the people that are listening to my podcast and coming to me for work are mainly familiar with that. And so I guess probably initially it was to avoid spending 15, 20 minutes in an hour's time to do a reading of explaining that to somebody, because it was just a waste of time. They both work. Absolutely. There's no argument in my head around that. It's just, I just chose it because it was more collectively available, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. What do you find most inspiring about being a professional astrologer?
Changing people's lives and bringing them closer to wholeness. Absolutely.
Do you have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just to say, that's the whole point, to help people. I think.
And you feel that, like every time you work with a client, you're feeling that exchange, that you're helping 100%. Them.
Yeah. If I don't feel that by, say, like, because I let readings go to an hour and a half sometimes, for sure, like hour and a half. But if I feel there is anything missing and there's no connection that has been done, I'll keep going until it happens. Like, that's my dharmic role, I think, with astrology, is to really excite people about it, but to give them context of understanding their lives in a really unique way, and then give them all these tools to work with. That changes a person's life, especially if they commit to it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Are you finding that there's more and more people interested and open in astrology? Is there less of like a convincing effort that needs to be made in terms of whether or not it's accurate or real or useful?
I want to say yes, but I also am very aware of more and more people getting into technology and the interconnected nature of us through podcasting and these videos and everything like that. And so it definitely seems that way, for sure. And I think there is a lot of people, and what I witness as well as men, like a lot of my friends have become interested in astrology in, the decade of me doing this. And I'm not trying to convince them. It's just like an osmosis thing. They become a little interested and they start asking me questions. And so I think, yeah, is the answer.
I mean, that's really interesting, the whole male versus female aspect, because I was just noticing for our Decode Your Cosmic Blueprint course, I would say 95% of the people that are signed up are women. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. It still seems, but maybe because you're a man, maybe, and I also think your emphasis on the living sky, I could see that being really attractive to men as well. That.
Sure. Yeah. 95%. I mean, that's a new number for me too. It's definitely over 80. I think.
Yeah, well, normally like our audience for watching this show and all that, it's about 80% women. But I'm saying for the actual students that are going to be in the class, it's a lot more women than men.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know. This has actually been a topic of mine, like speaking to synodic cycles, like Mars is squaring the sun today. All right. And so that's like a quarter of the way through a Mars cycle. At sunrise, you can see Mars if you look south and up, like that's where he's at. And as we know, the nature of a square is a bit of a riddle. It's abrasive, right? There's something that comes up with a square. And so when you're tracking a cycle and it's Mars that we're looking at, we can assume things come up around the masculine, right? Inside of ourselves, but also in our external universe. And it's come to my attention. I was completely unconscious about it, that the majority of my guests that I have on my show are men. Mm. And I don't think about that. I mean, I definitely have women on, like absolutely, but I just never thought about it. And so now that I'm aware of it, it's like, okay, I have to create the balance. But also I think unconsciously I was creating the balance by having like these men that are connected to their heart, that definitely aren't like alpha bro astrologers or anything like this. Like they're really sweet men talking about astrology. And it then, I think, enables men who might listen to resonate with it. And so, I mean, still with my practice, I mean, I'm working mainly with women, but more and more I'm surprised about how many men are coming to me. And that really excites me because historically they've been pretty shut off to it.
Well, but would you say too, though, that most of the teachers of astrology are men, even though most of the students are women?
I know.
That's an interesting thing too. Yeah. We could probably go down that rabbit hole as to our theories on why. I'd love to hear from the audience why you think that is. But isn't it more like at the conferences and the professional astrology events that they're having to actually solicit women to speak at them because most of the speakers and teachers are men?
I wasn't aware of that, but it makes sense.
Because I think it's true. Yeah, someone can call me on that, but I think that's true. Okay, Adam, what do you think is the most valuable astrological technique that you offer your clients?
So I already mentioned it, but I'll explain it a little better. Time Lord techniques are phenomenal. And there's one I've been using since the beginning of my work, which actually comes from Vedic astrology, and it's called the Vimsvatari Dasa cycle. It's based off of where your moon was when you're born. I'm not going to get into the details of exactly how it's constructed, but it's 120 years in length. And as far as I know, I've never been to India, but all the Jyotishis and people that study Vedic astrology that I know all use it. So it's a technique, and I guess we could say that to be true with transits with Western astrologers. Like every Western astrologer uses transits, so it's similar in that way, but it's very different because it's not sky-based. It's mathematical in how it works, and really what it is like the scroll of the soul, and it shows when karma is ripe. And so traditionally it's used for prediction. I don't do prediction, I'm not interested, but I am very interested in what is most relevant and what is alive right now. And the way I use it is 100% accurate in this technique, where you see, like, for example, myself, I'm in a Saturn dasa, right? And it lasts a pretty good long period of time. So I know that my natal Saturn is primary, and I moved into it right before my Saturn return. So there's these overlaps that you usually see with transits, progressions, or really any other technique that you might employ. And it gives you this allowance to know where to start when you're looking at a chart, because definitely for beginners, when you're just looking at a chart, you're like, oh my God, where to begin? Where do you start working with this? Because the whole goal is wholeness, yet you see all these different voices, all these different planetary archetypes that are present in the chart. When you use Time Lord techniques, it really fine tunes where to start, because that is what is going on at the deepest level in that person. And there's another one that I am carefully using, more or less observing at this point. It's called zodiacal releasing, and it comes from Hellenistic astrology. And so Chris Brennan basically was the one that introduced me to this through coming on my podcast, and also learning about it through his book and other colleagues. And it has a lot of promise too, as far as like using it in a similar way. And so Time Lord techniques have become the first thing, like when I'm really preparing for a reading, that I look at. And I even play games with myself and students to be able to look at the chart and the transits and the progressions, because that's mainly what I use, and actually guess what dasa and or bhukti, or what part of the cycle they're in. Because if you can do that, then that's cosmonosis. Like you understand like how to really translate your intuition and understand what's going on within it. And if you can really translate all of this information, which can be a little confusing at first, then your power as an astrologer, and get right to the point, like what really is the purpose of you coming to me and sitting with me right now, you've already nailed it. And so that, and then also combining that with planetary cycles. And so Time Lords, working with the cycles, that's like the essence of what I do first whenever I look at a chart.
Fantastic. Can you give us an example or a story of one of the most astounding experience you've had with a client using this technique?
Yes, there are many. And the first that comes to my mind is last summer, I started offering these planetary journey readings. So like they're 5-part readings. And as you know, like one reading sometimes doesn't cut it. It's like getting therapy or one massage and thinking your back's going to get better. It's like, if you really want to change, like you're going to have more than one reading. And so I've created these packages. There's like the Mars journey, the eclipse journey, the Venus journey, the Mercury journey. And the purpose is to fully understand them in the chart, transits, progressions, and then actually working with the living sky with them. And so there's like a full comprehension of that planet by the end of it. And there's this woman that I'm actually still currently working with that was so excited about this idea that she signed up for all of them. So I've been working with her for a while now. And we started with the Venus journey. And interestingly enough, as we were going into that, she had just moved into her Venus dasa, which is actually the longest of all of the planetary periods within that technique. And it was just fascinating because she felt this pull, like there was an urge to do it. And she had just moved into this period. And then also, like I'm talking about an overlap that you usually see in transits or progressions. And so what also was occurring is her progressed Venus had moved to the exact degree of her south node, which it ruled. She has a Libra south node, and so it hit the south node and she moved into this dasa. And I'm like, it begins. I mean, it doesn't get more interesting than that because it's all online in a way, like everything is here. And so the depth that we were able to go, because it was an alive experience for her. And then with all of this information pointing to it, it's been like a really amazing journey with her. And so, I mean, that happens really in every session I do. You always see this like cosmonosis, or basically synchronicity, show up. And then if you know really what it means, that's a really powerful technique, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's what I think is so amazing about astrology, is the way that it literally can shine spotlights on different aspects of your life and help you focus your awareness and your attention. So for example, just the very broad, everybody's having Saturn and Capricorn. And
Right.
yet knowing that, for me, it's like I can see all these different things happening in my life, in my business, in my relationships, in whatever, in my body, and filter it through the Saturn and Capricorn lens, and understand what aspects I'm being asked to cultivate right now. So it sounds like, you're using that in much more detail, in, lots of different planets and their cycles, and helping people just like laser focus in and know, okay, this is the work right now. This is what the focus is.
Right. Yeah.
All right. And people are wondering how that's spelled. The
Vimsotari dasa.
Yeah.
I think I can do it off the top of my head. Vimshottari. Vimshottari dasa cycle. So there's actually, I'm pretty sure, hundreds of different dasa, like Time Lord techniques that are in Vedic astrology. That's the main one that's used. And I've never really drifted off of it, because if it works that well, I don't know what else I would need. I don't know. Like, I mean, it does everything that I want astrology to do.
Yeah.
And so I don't need to turn my gaze to anything else, really.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, and
Yeah.
just one more little plug. Actually, I cannot promise this will be the last plug, but one of the things that we're talking about with Decode Your Cosmic Blueprint
Uh-huh.
is how it is giving the foundation so that if you do want to go down that Vedic path or you want to go into other methodologies, that you'll have that foundation so you can actually understand the language and see, what is the little bit of a difference over here and why would I use that technique at certain points versus another technique at other points. So really just laying that foundation for all these different amazingly incredible paths that you can go down in astrology. Yeah. All right.
Right.
Okay. So Adam, if there are people out there who are interested in, let's start with people who are interested in potentially becoming professional astrologers. What's one piece of advice that you would give to them in terms of setting themselves up for success?
Give as many readings as you can. There's nothing else that, because it comes alive in that space. And for me in the early years, I just said yes to everyone that asked. And I would just give readings to people, and I would go to farmers markets, and I would go to festivals, and I would do all these things to where I really got my wings by giving like 10, 20, 30 readings a day at some of these events. And once you do that, you stop doubting yourself, because that's a huge thing in the beginning of working with astrology, because there's so much information. I mean, it's vast. You're dealing with a person's life. You're dealing with layers of reality, somatically, mental, spiritually. Like there's just so much going on. And I mean, I know for myself, like there was a lot of doubt in the beginning of, am I a charlatan? Do I actually know what I'm talking about? Like I can talk, I can make people think I know what I'm talking about, and I'm helping people, but still there was like this nagging doubt in the back of my head in the beginning. At a certain point, once you give enough readings, you don't doubt it anymore. Like it's very real. And once you find techniques that work for you as well, you don't doubt them. Like it works. And so like one of the precepts that I live by, like, and I teach my students, is the chart doesn't lie. And so if you're objective and you get yourself out of the way as much as possible when you're interpreting a chart and you're working with somebody, that chart doesn't lie. Nothing about it is trying to pull a fast one on you. And so as long as you trust it, that's a really powerful advancement in your learning. But I don't think that you can read yourself through books into becoming a good astrologer. I think that's impossible.
It's true with everything. Any path that you go down, it's like the educational piece is super important and having that foundation. And then we have to practice and do it over and over and over and learn from the feedback that we get from the environment and the different people. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. Mm-hmm. What about those who are beginners and they've just recently fallen in love with astrology and they want to go deeper? What would you say to them?
Well, definitely get book suggestions and start there. You keep plugging your program, doing programs like that, right? Like, I mean, I offer classes, I do an apprenticeship program, like I do a lot of different things like that myself. Finding a community is huge. I know for myself, I mean, I kind of lucked out in a way, because when I got into astrology, I was surrounded by people that already kind of spoke astrology. And it was second nature, because so many of my conversations were able to like meet me there, where I know like a lot of people, like they're not in that environment. And so they don't have a lot of people that they can actually practice talking about this and looking at charts. And so finding a community that you resonate with is huge.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we feel so strongly about our inner circle. And we hear it so many times is people saying, this is the only place where I can go and really be myself and speak this language. And you all don't think I'm crazy. You all know what I'm saying. And we can, that is one of the beautiful things about astrology, is creating that common language that helps us connect. No matter where we're at in the world, we have the common glue of that astrological language. So yeah. All right, Adam, what else would you like to say to the audience about your experience as an astrologer or the path of astrology? Anything else that you'd like to leave us with?
What else to say? I think getting excited about it being the type of path like the spiritual quest is that doesn't end. There is no moment that I foresee for myself when I'm going to feel like I know everything there is to know about astrology, because everything is changing always, and people are complicated. Life is infinitely complicated. And so it's just one of those things that constantly humbles you. And I think that's really exciting proposition for anything that we're into, because if you think that you're going to get to a point when you really know everything about astrology, you have the wrong mentality around it. And also, I don't know, the feeling in my heart around this is like, wow, 10 years into this, it supports me. I still love it. I have people that are listening to me and really excited about my work, and I don't foresee it ending. And that is an amazing position to be in, and we all can be there. Like, we're all going to be doing different roles in relationship to this great remembering. And that's really what it is with astrology. It's like, this has been around forever, ever since we could generate symbols and try to understand abstract meaning and see cycles and all of it. Like, we have connected to the sky and made meaning from it. And I think that we're remembering, and there's a lot of people that just don't get it at this point, but they will. You know, a lot of people didn't understand health food or yoga or many things even 20 years ago. And look where it's at now. And I think astrology is going to get to the same position in our lifetime.
Absolutely. Many of you are familiar with Deborah Silverman. I had a conversation with her one time that she said the same exact things, that she thinks astrology is like yoga 25 years ago, that there's still time that needs to happen, but it will be a household conversation that people are having, and it won't be so exotic and weird and out there anymore. And I love what you're saying too. And that is one of the things that I absolutely love about this role, is speaking to so many astrologers who are so passionate about their work, decades in, still learning, still, in that kind of place of beginner's mind to a certain extent, because we're studying an ever expanding universe. This planet is never exactly the same. So even astrology 2,500 years ago applied today is going to have different flavor, different challenges that we're all working with. So we're never going to exhaust it, which for some people might seem daunting, but I think for all of us, everyone tuned in here, it's exciting because it's just, there's more and more and more to uncover.
And you can do a lot of things with it, right? It's like for myself, I started with an interest of using it as a diagnostic tool in what I was already doing. I was doing medical Qigong work with people. And that just naturally grew into basically being a counseling astrologer, and then bringing in a lot of my creativity and my artistic interests into the podcast. And once that all happened, I'm like, okay, this is where I'm focused. Like, so many disparate parts of who I am all come together in my writing and in the podcast. And so that's been my dedication. And then, of course, working with people and teaching. And so there's a huge field of astrology that I don't even know that much about. It's like, I'm not able to be an academic. I'm not able to do the deep research that I know I need to do on particular topics. I don't have time for it. But what I do feeds me on every level, and I'm okay with that. I can stay humble around not having all of this down, or these parts as well. It's like, I have a whole life to live. Like, maybe that'll come, right?
Yeah, well, and the good news is that there's other people that are doing that.
Exactly. And I can talk to them on my podcast, and so can you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, Samuel wants to know what your sun, moon, and rising are.
Guess.
No, that's fun.
Yeah.
Let's see what people say. So what's your sun, moon, and rising? Let's see what people say. Hold on, let's hold that. Stephanie wants to know if you still practice acupuncture and Qigong with people.
Medical Qigong, I do myself every day. I don't see clients in the same way anymore. Like, I used to have an office and, see people. Astrology took over.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Faye would like to know how we find your podcast. What day and time is it?
So wherever you find podcasts. You just put in Exploring Astrology and you will find it on there. It's pretty easy to find on iTunes or your podcast app, Podcast Addict, all of those. And then my website, which is holesToHeavens.com, and all the podcasts are on there too.
Okay. All right. I'm trying
days and times like that doesn't happen. I do it when it feels right. And sometimes I have elections around it, but it's essentially every week at some point in the week.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a guess here. Okay, we have a couple. So Kristen says Gemini, Aries, and Taurus are jumping out for me. Isabel
One of
said
those. Gemini. We'll save Gemini. Is that for the sun?
Wait. Don't say anything yet. We have Gemini, Cancer, and Leo. So I don't know. Sun, Moon, and Rising was the question. So maybe people.
So that's the progression.
Yeah. We have Libra, Pisces, Scorpio.
I think we've named all the signs. I'm confused.
No, hold on. I want to see if there's anyone. See if there's any Scorpio rising. We have a Virgo. We have a couple Sag guesses.
It's all true.
It's all true. Of course, right?
Well, that one person guessed my sun. So Gemini sun.
Mm-hmm.
Virgo rising. Scorpio moon.
Nice. We got it. We definitely got some combinations that meet that. Okay. All right. Let me see. Anything else, Adam? This has been so much fun. I want to see if there's any other questions for you. Have you had a Vedic reading? This was for me. No, I haven't had a Vedic reading, but I've had Vedic astrologers on several of our summits and events, but no personal Vedic reading at this point. It would be really nice to experience, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a depth. Like if especially, I think Western astrologers, or not Western astrologers, people from the West who have devoted themselves to learning Jyotish. And so there's something really magical that can happen with that composite of approaches to where, because like traditional Jyotish is very much about like, this is the way that your life is, right? Like it's not all predictive. Like I don't mean to say it like that because it's not. But I've had Vedic readings from both Indians and Westerners, and it's a very different approach, in my opinion. And I think because we are, most of us, at least I'm assuming, listening from the West, there's more resonance that can come from a Jyotishi who speaks your language in a way.
Yeah. So are you saying in the Vedic reading, it's a little bit more like prescriptive about your life? Like this is what's...
We can make an assumption to that. I mean, India is a huge place. There's many Jyotishis, right? And it's completely consensus there. I mean, everyone is not necessarily into astrology, but there's a reverence to it as a way of knowing. And you know, the few that I've had, I mean, I've just been told some really silly things that I don't know how one would work with that information. You know, like one Jyotishi told me that I would be married 3 times and I would have, I forget how many kids by a certain age. Well, I'm already past that age, right? So like, I was just like aware of it. I'm like 3 times. Wow. Like that's going to be terrible. And like, maybe like I could stretch the meaning, but here's the thing. Like whenever you feel yourself stretching a meaning in astrology or like from an astrologer or whatever you're reading, stop yourself. Like, I don't think that's like a good approach, trying to make it relevant. And what I mean is like through that reading, I'm like, well, I was in 3 profound relationships in my life and we can consider those marriages. No, they weren't marriages, right? Like, and I don't have a kid yet.
Right.
So like, I think the truth, we all know the truth when it hits us. So like when you listen to something like your broadcast or if you read a book or an author you really resonate with, like, or get a reading that really changes you, it hits you and you don't have to think about it. It's like, yes, that's truth. I know that to be true. And this is, I don't know, that for me is really how I've navigated a lot of the information in astrology. Is like, if I resonate with a technique, I'll test it 100 times. And then if it starts to fall short, I'll just compost it. So like whatever works, I keep around. I'm like, okay. And then it grows in power because I understand it more and more and more. And then if I understand it really well, then I can deliver that truth to people really well.
Fantastic. All right, Adam, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah,
For people who might want a reading with you or who might want to learn more about your work, can you tell us where to go?
Yep. So my website is holstoheavens.com. So it's HOLES, holstoheavens.com. And again, you can find my podcast wherever podcasts are found, Exploring Astrology.
All right. Well, it's been so much fun to have you here today. Thank you so much
likewise.
for sharing. All right. And so next week, same time, same place, we're going to be on with astrologer Divine Harmony. Many of you are very familiar with her. We feature her a lot. We love her. She is going to be covering aspects of the asteroid goddesses. So please tune in. If you want to get a live alert when we go live with Divine Harmony or any of our astrologers for Astrology Hub TV, please sign up for alerts. The link is going to be in the chat for you to sign up for live alerts. You'll get an alert, a Facebook message on your phone when we go live. And sorry to those of you who are getting those a little bit late. We'll work on that and see if we can get those to go out more in sync with the actual time that we start the broadcast. Okay, and don't forget, this is the final moments. We only have a few more hours until enrollment closes for Decode Your Cosmic Blueprint, how to read a chart for yourself and others. This is our 10-week course with Donna Woodwell. It's perfect for those of you who would like to get your foundation and astrological chart reading down. Donna does start the entire 10-week journey with the living sky. So we're going to not just be looking at the flat chart, as Adam spoke about earlier, the importance of being aware of both. So she's going to start with the living sky and get you oriented there. And it's perfect for any of you who are new to astrology. Also for those of you who have been studying astrology for several decades or years or whatever it is, and you feel like there's gaps in your foundation and in your learning. So check it out. The link is in the chat. It's also in the description above this video. And for those of you in the inner circle, you do get $50 off the course. So if you're in the inner circle and you want to join us, email us at support@astrologyhub.com and we'll make sure that you get the right link and the discount code to get your $50 off. Anything else I wanted to say? Enrollment closes tonight at midnight Pacific and class starts on Sunday. All right. Thank you everybody so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure to be here with you. And thank you for making astrology a part of your life. We'll see you next week.